It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their non-linear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on that path to success. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website. Today, my guest is Zachary Shafer. Zack graduated with a bachelor's in psychology from Sacred Heart University in 2015, before continuing at SHU to receive his master's in occupational therapy in 2018. After completing his master's, Zack completed a postgraduate OT mental health fellowship program at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where he published clinical research, taught at the university, and provided clinical care across UNC Hospital's inpatient psychiatric units. Zack continued to work as part of inpatient therapy team, specializing with adults with severe persistent mental illness. As an occupational therapist, Zack is passionate about the therapeutic use of activities to promote healing and the functional application of psychotherapy to improve participation, engagement, and meaning in everyday life. Challenged by the practice limitations of the inpatient setting, Zack was drawn to Mountain Valley for its progressive, holistic, and experiential approach to treatment. Upon joining the team, Zack was enamored by the beautiful natural setting, passionate about people, and clinical sophistication of the program. Zack is honored to be a part of Mountain Valley family, where he can apply the holistic principles of occupational therapy and support the program's mission to help anxious youth live meaningful and engaging lives. Now, Zack is originally from Massachusetts, so he calls himself a Mass native. He now lives in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Actually, is it Lebanon or is it Lebanon? $1 million question. I don't know. He lives there with his wife and their two pets, Cosmo and Sunny. Zack and his wife are both occupational therapists who fell in love working alongside each other, and Zack actually talks about that during this interview. As a former collegiate athlete, Zack enjoys pushing his physical limits through a variety of activities such as yoga, hiking, and high-intensity training. When he isn't buzzing about, Zack enjoys spending time reading, reflecting, and spending time in nature. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Zack. Hi, Zack. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Joanna. Excited to be on your show after having you on mine.
I know. It feels like it was just yesterday. So this is so exciting. And we will actually include the link of you having me as a guest so that folks can listen to kind of both perspectives in talking about some of the same topics, but not necessarily all of the same. So I'm excited to have you. And let's just dive right in, if you're okay with it. I would love to know if you could share with the listeners, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were receiving about what you were supposed to be doing like after high school?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, Mansfield, Massachusetts, south shore of Boston. So Northeast kiddo, which I think plays into a little bit of the culture of how I was raised. Very go-getter. I had two parents who worked full-time. My dad and my mom both commuted to Boston every day, very career-oriented individuals. Grew up with a babysitter for most of my childhood. I think when I was in high school, remote work started to become a thing, and my dad was finally fortunate enough to be home during our high school years. So it's kind of almost like the reverse of what a lot of people have. But I certainly grew up in a household where work was a big focus and a big part of your life. What are you going to do? How are you going to make a difference in the world? How are you going to contribute? So a lot of that played into sort of how I was raised. And at the time, sort of what was normative for if you want to work, you got to go to college. So college was always something that was was really on my mind. Despite not really being a kid who loved school, I was decent at school. I've always been pretty smart, but I just didn't really find it interesting. I have some ADHD, and I very much am much more of a kinesthetic kid. So sitting down in a classroom for long hours was not exactly something I looked forward to. But yeah, I certainly, I was raised in a household where work was a big focus, career was a big focus, family as well. But college bound was sort of where my mind was at for post high school right from the get-go.
So thank you for sharing that. Now I'm just curious kind of like what that transition to higher ed looked like for you in terms of kind of the not just the academic experience, but the social, emotional, all of it, because as you and I both know, working with this emerging adult population, there's a lot in transition. And so with that, I always think it's helpful for us to humanize our own experiences, because this idea of launching off to college, if that's what you end up doing, is not without adversity. It's not without change. And so I'm asking you, long-winded, I'm asking you to describe your transition, and then I'm going to plant this seed for a follow-up question, which I think, without knowing your full story, is going to align though with your story. I want you to share in what ways in your life maybe you've wandered, quote unquote, off the path, if that's something that's actually played out for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess another big motivation for me to go to college, which I think is for a lot of young teenagers and adolescents who are probably listening to this, was independence. I mean, I was always an independent kid. I'm a middle child of three brothers. I was the kid I was the black sheep who always did his own thing. And like, for me, college not only meant career, but it meant out of the house. And like, I can finally be in a place where I'm making my own decisions and doing my own things. So I was very excited about the transition. I was very optimistic about being on my own and finally having the opportunity to kind of make some decisions for myself and to try different things. I think a good context for the topic of your podcast and for what I know you do with a lot of your young adult clients and people that you work with is that I did not choose my college for the right reason. So I was a high school athlete. If I can brag for a minute, I was a very good high school athlete.
Brag away, Zach.
So I was an all-state football player, a state champion, MVP of my team, MVP of my league, all that kind of stuff, right? So college for me was totally focused around where can I play football, and I want to play football at the highest level I can play at, and that was the only thing that I was using as my lens for my college experience. In my younger years, I knew I wanted to help people. And I knew I was realistic enough to know I wasn't going to make it to the NFL. So I knew that there was, I was going to need to find another career to do. And I'm an occupational therapist now, and I knew I wanted to be an OT in high school. So I kind of had that piece figured out, stemmed all the way back to me being as a kid, volunteering in a special needs classroom in my elementary school. I used to give up my recess time to go read books to the kids in the special needs classroom. It was something that totally filled me with joy, loved making those kids laugh, loved making them feel included. So I knew that I wanted to help people. And then I got into high school and I got exposed to occupational therapy. We had a really cool program in our school where we had a vocational program for kids that were not going to go the traditional path, who maybe were in special education. And we got to be peer models and peer supports for them and sort of help them do jobs around the school. So they would do janitor jobs and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is a really cool concept. And like, oh, you should look into occupational therapy. So had the OT mindset, but really football was what was driving my decision-making. And I got to college. I went to Sacred Heart University. It's a small liberal arts school in Connecticut, Division I AA football. So like that was the big selling point for me, was I could be a D1 athlete. And I got to college, and as a Division I athlete, my entire day circled around football. Like my classes were picked out for me around my practice schedule and like all of that kind of stuff. And I had an in-group. I had a group of people. I came to school a month early. I was on campus a month early. I had all these friends who had similar interests to me. I got to meet a bunch of the players even the spring before when we got to go up for like the spring game, right? So because I was an athlete, I had a lot of opportunity to help that social transition. Now, I put way too many eggs in that basket. Football is a dangerous and physical sport, and I suffered multiple ACL tears. I tore it once in high school. I tore it my freshman year of college, tore it my second year of college. And after the second back-to-back year, 3 surgeries on the same knee, my orthopedic surgeon sat me down and was just like, listen, bud, if you want to be active and play with your kids and do a lot of stuff, you really got to start thinking about the health of your knees and your joints. It's gone through a lot of trauma. So after 2 years in school, I had to make the really tough decision to take a step back from playing football. And that was where my transition happened. Because now I was at a school where I had this group of friends that I used to be a part of that I'm now no longer a part of because I'm not really a football player anymore. I chose this school based on football, not based on the community, the culture, not based on really anything other than I knew I wanted to play ball here. And that was a really rough year. My junior year of college, the spring of my sophomore year into my junior year of college was really hard. I had a really hard time finding my identity again because I had just so over-identified with being an athlete and being a football player. I got really into working out, but probably a little bit more excessive because I had begun to associate my sense of identity with my physical capacity and capability. So I felt like I couldn't really lose that piece. I'm happy to say I'm 30 years old and I still work out every day, which I'm good. I'm glad I didn't totally lose it, but for that period of time, it was certainly in a way that was probably a little bit unhealthy. I stepped into being a little bit of a party guy, the guy that liked to go out on the weekends, make people laugh. I like to do extreme things because I was trying to impress people because I was so used to impressing people with the way that I played on the field. And it did not culminate in a lot of really good decisions. And when I look back on that time of my life, it was a big challenge. And I remember calling my dad, one night really crying and just being like, I don't fit in here. Like, these aren't my people, and I chose to come here because I thought I was coming here to play football. And now that I'm not playing football, I'm not totally sure this is the right fit for me for a school. And my parents are wonderful at coaching me through difficult moments and seeing things that I can't always see for myself. They saw the OT thing on the horizon. Sacred Heart has a really good OT program. And they came to visit me and they saw the way that I was engaging with my friends, and they could tell that like I was doing okay. It was just I wasn't thinking that I was doing okay. And so I stuck with it, and I ended up doing all 4 years at Sacred Heart and even stayed for an additional 2 for my master's degree in occupational therapy. But it was just that, I guess, to answer your question in a very, very long-winded way, my initial transition into college was okay, but there was a transition that happened in the middle of my process that did not go so well.
Well, and I think you also, where we commonly see some of those changes is just more often than not, it's a change in major, right? Or it's a change in school even. But to have that identity, right? That's the social connection, the change in who you are. I think no longer being a student athlete on a college campus, that took you off your own path, because in your head, like you said, I picked this school because I was going to be playing, and I knew that I was only going to be playing up to this point. Beyond that, I knew I wasn't going to be in the NFL, but in my head, I'm going to be playing football for 4 years. Well, by year 2, when you're experiencing a significant physical trauma that not only impacts your sense of identity, but it also distances you from your immediate sense of community. I mean, that could be more disruptive than the common academic change or even a transfer institution. So I am reflecting back to you. What I hear is like that removed you from the original vision of what you had for yourself for your 4 years. And because of kind of how you were processing it within your own head, you weren't able to see outwardly how it was an opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when you said it took me off my original path, I'm a very spiritual person too, right? And it put me on the path that I was supposed to be on, and that I was already on, and I didn't really know I was on, right? And that's where like my senior year came around, and I had to actually apply to get into the grad program. I get a pre-acceptance based on my admission into the undergrad, but I had to then reapply to get into the grad program. And I was like, oh yeah, there's this whole thing about helping people that I absolutely love. where the hell did that go? Right. And so I really got into my academics. I had a killer senior year, ended up graduating a semester early. And, again, this is this identity piece, right? I had built all of these friends around football players, football dropouts who turned into party guys like I did. And then my senior year, I graduated a semester early and I take a job in early intervention helping kids with autism, right? And like every day I'm trying to go and grow into that person that I'm trying to be. And I'm returning back to my frat house of all of my buddies doing what they do in frat houses, right? And it was just like, whoa, now I feel even more disconnected a little bit. It was just like, because my buddies didn't get that part of me at all. All they saw was like this macho dude, like good football player, really good athlete, kind of like funny prankster, party guy. And they did not know that like at the heart of who I was as a person, I love to help and I love to like be of service to other people. And that was a really challenging time for me as well. I have really good friends that love me to the core of who I am. And now, we could talk a little bit about how maybe that it's come full circle with a lot of them as they've grown up and now they realize that I'm somebody that they can come to talk to about sensitive things or things that they may not talk to their other guy friends about because they know that I have that side of myself. But that was another big transition that sort of happened where I really was like, oh yeah, here I am again. I'm landing where I'm supposed to be. But I'm in an environment that's not exactly understanding or validating of my identity.
So I'm going to go a little bit off script as a follow-up question, because I think this just speaks to just so profoundly to this emerging adult population that you and I both work with. If you could give yourself, which is any advice to your younger self now, knowing kind of the transition, even leading to where you are now, what advice would you give yourself? And I asked this before, obviously here I am asking this question and then I need to explain it. I'm curious if the advice that you would give also just translates to quality advice for any young adult or parent of young adult that's listening here that is so hyper fixated on a particular sense of their individual identity, right? Like I am the football player and I'm playing D1 football, right? So if you could give advice to your younger self, if there's any translation to anybody in the audience that's listening, what advice would you give?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it would be to just really reflect on that question of like, who are you? And to call in people you love to also ask that question of like, who do you see me as? Right. Because I know if I had asked my mom at that time, she would have been like, oh, you're a helper. Like this football thing is like a transient stage in your life. But like, I've known that little son with the heart of gold since he was in elementary school, helping people that like that's what you were meant to do. Right. So like, don't get so caught up in the football piece, but really look at holistically who you are. I also think it's picking a school and picking a college based on an environment that's going to allow you to access all of who you are, not just one piece of who you are. Right. So Sacred Heart offered me a really good outlet to access that football piece. I'm a huge nature guy, like Bridgeport, Connecticut, Fairfield area. There's a little bit of nature, but it's not like I live in New Hampshire now out in the mountains. And, I moved to North Carolina and was exploring Asheville and all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until I graduated and started moving around to these other areas. I'm like, oh, wow, I actually feel at home in this place, like in the actual physical environment. My nervous system feels better. I feel more regulated. I feel more in tune with myself. I don't feel caught up in this hustle and bustle. So I think the physical environment piece, but if I took the time to really think about who I was and what environment was going to allow me to access all of who I am, not just one part of who I am, that would have been the biggest piece of advice I would have given.
Thank you. Okay, so you alluded to actually a good segue point for my next question, which is fill in the gaps, right? Like, what did you do once you graduated, leading to just telling us what are you doing now, which is going to be the opportunity for that shameless plug of the work itself and where you work. But you mentioned Asheville at some point and potentially some other like mountainous areas. So just give the listeners kind of a play-by-play of where did you actually go once you got your master's leading to where you are now?
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll talk a little bit about my master's too, right? And I think that it was another opportunity to redefine myself. So that senior year, there was a lot of rub between who I was trying to become and the environment that I had built around myself. Again, my college buddies might hear this. I still love you guys, and I do, but there was a lot of rub that year, right? So once I stepped into my master's program, all of my undergrad buddies, a lot of them were not doing master's degree programs. So they left and they went off to go start their job in the workforce. I stayed, and I used that as an opportunity to redefine myself with the cohort of occupational therapy students that I was really in, that I was immersed with. And that was a place where I really got to step into okay, I'm really good. I like this helping people thing and working with people, and I'm a real good people person. So had an awesome time at Sacred Heart for those 2 years of my master's degree, felt much more comfortable in who I was, and not getting rid of that old side of myself, that athletic kind of more bravado side, but integrating it along with that very compassionate and sensitive side of myself. I finished up there, and I took an opportunity here's the kid who doesn't love school. I took an opportunity to continue some schooling and signed up for a fellowship program at the University of Chapel Hill, working in the inpatient hospital down there. So I was an OT 3 days a week, and then I was an academic 2 days a week doing research and helping teach some courses at UNC, and loved Chapel Hill, loved North Carolina, but I moved there all on my own. I had no friends, no family, no one in North Carolina. I wasn't in the school, so I didn't have a class. I was the only fellow, right? I didn't have a classmate of people to really engage with. So I spent a lot of time alone. And it was a really, really beautiful time in my life. During grad school, my best friend had taken his own life. My best friend from home, one of my football buddies from high school. And that again was another turning point, I think, in my social identity with my friends, because when that had happened, a lot of my friends didn't quite know how to engage with that kind of topic. And I had been studying psychology and had been in school and all of that. So I was a real resource for a lot of my friends. And then once I finished grad school, I went down there and I just had so much time to reflect and focus on my work and my academics and really figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have any ties, any relationships. It was just me. It was just me time. And I will always look back on that time very fondly in my life. And the mountains were my place of exploration. So every weekend I drove from Chapel Hill out to Asheville and spent time hiking in the mountains and staying in hostels, and then coming back and working at the hospital for the week, and kind of did that back and forth for some time. Then one of my best friends that I was working with, another OT at the hospital, we were working really close together, and we ended up falling in love, and she's now my wife. So we started dating down in North Carolina. It was during COVID, and COVID working in a hospital system was really, really hard. And working in inpatient psych was something that I knew just wasn't me forever, just because of the limitations of the setting. Very necessary resource, but just there was more I felt like I could do for people. And I was such a relational person too, that that 2-week crisis window, it wasn't fulfilling my needs of needing to build long-lasting, meaningful relationships with the people that I help. So my wife and I started looking for other jobs, and we really wanted to try to get into the field of, or I really wanted to get into the field of adolescent residential treatment. That was something that was always really important to me. And I had applied to a bunch of wilderness programs and different programs across the country. With an OT background, I did not really get a whole lot of traction. So talk about a non-traditional path. I mean, I was literally sending emails pitching OT and myself to, I think I sent an application out to probably 55 different programs across the country. And one of them took the bait, and that was Mountain Valley, and which is where I am now. So Mountain Valley Treatment Center, we're a nonprofit residential program located in New Hampshire, and we serve teenagers and young adults. So our age range is 13 to 20, who are struggling with severe anxiety and related disorders. Started here as their first OT ever. Things went really well. We decided to hire another OT. Guess who that OT was? It was my wife. So we worked as co-workers again as the two OTs for Mountain Valley. And then over the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to get some promotions into leadership. And I'm now serving as the executive director of Mountain Valley, which has been an absolute blast. And I love this place. So.
And we'll make sure that we have all the links for Mountain Valley and your contact in the show notes so that anybody that's curious, including your podcast, because here's a little plug. You started a podcast, which has been a phenomenal resource, not just, I think, as a way to demonstrate the expertise that is Mountain Valley and way to be a kind of progressive program and hear your pitch for OT, because now you all are really like paving the path for what appears to be kind of the model, right? Like this actually is effective. We need more people to consider OT within their programmatic space professionally and for clients. But the podcast also just, I'm a listener, so I'm obviously kind of biased at this point, but I've found it to be, you're just a great person to listen to, right? Like some people aren't great at that, but you are. And the guests that you have on the show are just really good at being able to share their story and expertise in specifically what it is that you're asking them. So we'll make sure that's in there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I was just going to say thank you. I appreciate it. I still get kind of bashful with things like that. Podcasting has always been something that I've wanted to do. So that's been a fun little venture for me. I'm an avid podcast listener. I'm an audio guy, always have been. I've always had a hard time sitting down and reading. So audiobooks and podcasts. But thank you for shouting out the podcast. I appreciate it.
Keep doing it. Okay, so last question for somebody who obviously has been sharing with us their experience from how you were raised, like a product, right? Not just of where you were raised, but who you were raised by and that work ethic, what's important, and you sharing your academic and employment history leading to where you are now. I'm just going to ask you the direct question that I ask all my guests. Do you see yourself as successful?
I do. Yeah, I do see myself as successful. It's kind of weird for me to say out loud. I still struggle a lot with that internally. I think a lot of people do. You know, I do think I still tend to be very career oriented. And sometimes that comes at the cost of my family and my friends. And I think I do define success as being someone who's well balanced in all of these different areas. So I think that there's room for improvement in my ability to be successful overall, considering all the different facets of my life. But I do consider myself to be successful. And I do consider myself to have taken a pretty non-traditional path. I mean, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that have these kind of dual parts to themselves that they don't always, either the world reflects back of like, you're either the sweet, sensitive guy who helps people or like you're the party football guy. You kind of can't be both, right? And like, I think I did a good job of taking on the courage of like, no, all of this is me and I'm gonna try to be all of it at the same time, right? And like, oh, OTs don't work in mental health, like says who, right? Like, let me just put myself out there and see what we can do and see what can happen, right? So I think for anyone listening, you know, just try, like put it out there. Like, don't allow the belief systems that are being, all of those belief systems that you're being brought up in and that you're being surrounded by were founded by somebody taking a first stab in that direction, right? So like you can be the pioneer. And I think a lot of people just don't think of themselves that way. And I actually don't think of myself that way either. I think I just think about trying to be me. And by being you, you will end up being a pioneer because there's only one of you and you're going to set the path for a lot of different people. So sorry, that was a little all over the place, but that was what was coming to my mind.
Zach, that was the perfect way to, no need to apologize. Thank you for that. It's the perfect ending to this interview because I was going to say, I know even up to this point, somebody's listening to this and they're going to just really resonate with your story. And then obviously I want people to be curious. I mean, this is a small conversation, a short conversation, right? This is a snapshot of who you are. And so I think that a part of this podcast too, my call to action is to connect people. And so if there is anybody listening to this, whether or not you connect with Zach in one way, shape, or another, please reach out to have that connection. Zach's a helper. I'm gonna put you out there. He wants to help others. Obviously, we don't want him to be flooded, and yet I always appreciate when somebody actually takes the initiative after listening to this podcast. If the invitation is there to reach out to the guest of the podcast, to actually do it, right? Like, be brave, be the pioneer, connect. And Zach, thank you again for being who you are and for being willing to come on this podcast, share part of your story, and then open the door for anybody who wants to connect.
Thanks, Joanna. Really appreciate being on. And the door is certainly open. So please reach out, and you can find all my contact information on Mountain Valley's website, cell phone number, and email are there. So thank you very much.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.